John, thanks for joining us on the Order of Man podcast. It's good to see you again.
Oh yeah, Ryan, thanks for having me back.
I think we're talking under different circumstances, and although external circumstances change, I don't think much changes or has changed. Maybe it's only exacerbated with the cause of masculinity and the fight for men. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah. Although the world does seem to be collapsing into serious gender confusion, it's really heartbreaking. Um, you
What's your
know, ga-
take on you use that term gender? What's your take on the distinction or the differentiation that we have seen increasing between gender and sex? What's your thoughts on that?
yeah, right. Well, if sex you mean male and female or sexuality, yeah, it's a beautiful broken mess. We work with a lot of guys. We hear from a lot of guys around the world, and um, gender now, like it's, I would say, is masculinity a real thing? Is femininity a real thing? Is gender something fluid that you move back and forth? This is the current condition of the world.
Right.
And the accepted social norm now is that your gender, although you may have a female body, you may have a masculine body. In other words, you have the apparatus, but you actually can change that. If internally you feel more like a woman as a man, or you feel more like a man as a woman, or you're not sure, it's a um, and it's I know it's pissing a lot of people off, but bottom line, it's really heartbreaking because people, when you're confused at that level, you're really confused.
No doubt.
That's that your masculinity is so core to your being and to who you were created to be, that if that is been called into question, if that's come under a lot of doubt or assault, man, that's a hard place to find yourself in.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, not only that, obviously, those individuals who are at that point are very confused. It's got to be very frustrating and very heart wrenching. But then there's also the popularity of it. Right? And we know that, right? We've seen that is that it's popular or it's
Yep,
cool or it's in
yep, it's
vogue.
hip. Yep,
Right. And then we end up injecting these children with puberty blockers and things like this that do irreversible damage to their growth and who they are as potentially men in the future.
right. And their health, by the way. I
Yes,
mean, you can't.
absolutely.
Yeah, you start jacking around with your body and your hormones and your chemistry and stuff, and that also is super damaging. But there's two stories going on in the world right now, and one story is not getting told. Everybody knows that story that we just talked about, right? It's
Hmm.
just crazy making.
Sure.
But the really cool story, Ryan, because of where we sit, kind of at Wild at Heart, we're in contact with a lot of guys like you, a lot of guys around the world, and we're getting a pulse of what's going on in the masculinity movement. And there is good news.
Yes,
Like the guys,
100%.
yeah, the guys who follow you, the guys who are doing father son things, that there's all kinds of grassroots, organic, real deal stuff for men going on, not just in the US, but all over the world. And
Hmm.
it's this great untold story. I'm loving it because there is a recovery of genuine masculinity going on. It's just not taking place in the media.
I'm glad you talk about that. It's funny because we started this podcast and movement 6 years ago. As of what's today? Is today the 25th? As of yesterday was our 6 year
Oh,
anniversary. Yeah.
happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I never in a million years would have imagined that the conversations we'd be having would be so impactful and powerful. But I think it's a testament to what you're saying is that men recognize that there's something wrong. Men want to improve themselves. They want to get better. They want to step more fully into masculinity. But it isn't a topic that is mainstream, although we see that conversation swelling. And I'm glad to be part of it and honored to be able to be in the battle with you, actually. So
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are killing it. And there's guys like you out there that are trying to follow suit. There's a good story going on. And I think guys would be encouraged just to know that.
yeah, yeah, 100%. You know, one of the things that you've talked quite a bit about recently is how the fallout and the reaction to COVID. I'm very hesitant to say COVID itself is the problem as much as the reaction to COVID is the problem. So, I mean, we can discuss that. But it seems to me that the fallout and reaction to COVID has created some real problems for men. And I think you would attest and agree to that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's been pretty bad. If you watched, like, literally 1 month after lockdown a year ago, domestic violence went through the roof. They had to
Mm.
build shelters in Paris for women and children.
Hmm.
And and in China, which had the first wave of lockdown and all that, the day they released quarantine, they let people back out of their apartments. The divorce offices were overwhelmed. So
Hmm.
guys locked at home, like, that's brutal on a man. You take a wild horse and you put him in a styrofoam box. He's going to go nuts. And so, yeah, drug use was up, and depression and anxiety and domestic violence, that kind of thing. I think I call it the pandemic. It's not, as a generic term for the economy, the lockdowns, the quarantines, the politics, all of it, all that's happened to the world in the last year, I think has been tougher on men than on women.
Why do you say that is? Because women are relational. Women want to be around other women. In fact, I think, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me if I am. I am. But generally speaking, I think women are more relational than men, or at least we
No
approach it
question.
differently.
No question. They are wired for it. They are relationally, they need a larger relational snowshoe than
Mm-hmm.
guys need. Guy has one
Mm-hmm.
or two friends. He's good.
He's good. Sure.
But a woman has an entire relational network going on. But here's what happened. I think several things. One is guys love to fix things.
Mm.
Hey, seriously, man, you
Of
fix your
course.
car, you fix the dishwasher, man. You feel like a hero,
And you feel
right?
good. You feel proud and
Yeah, yeah,
excited about what you
yeah.
accomplished.
Okay, so funny story. My kids are having their kitchen remodeled, and they had the crew over there, and they're doing the countertops and the kind of thing. And I was over just to sort of help wherever I could. Vacuum cleaner's broken. I'm watching all these guys working with tools and being real men. I'm like, hey, I'll fix the vacuum cleaner, which I did. And I felt like $1,000,000. I'm like,
Yeah.
I am the guy who fixed the vacuum cleaner. Thank you very much. Like, okay,
I made
so
all of this happen.
come on, this is it. Guys love to fix stuff. We love to make a difference. We love to set things right. When things are jacked up, if we can step in and make it right, we feel like the man. Okay. This
Mm-hmm.
is really, 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 which is why failure, by the way, we can get off on the rabbit trails, but failure for men is the worst fear ever.
Mm.
Fear of failure. So when we kill it, when we win, when we fix it, when we make a difference, okay, here's what happened to men. You take that deep need, and we told men, go home and do nothing.
Right. Right.
It was emasculating. You're not an essential worker. You're not really needed for this. And you saw all this anger. I felt it in myself because nobody liked what was happening to the world. We're like, this is messed up. But we didn't know what to do about it.
Mm.
And it didn't feel like the kind of thing you could just go out and fix, right? It's like you're going to go change your oil filter. It's like, and so this anger welled up, and thus the domestic violence and the drinking and all that kind of stuff. That's why I think it was harder on men, is that you take this warrior who's made to, like, intervene, and you tell him, sorry, there's nothing you can do, just go home.
Yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying, but my question about that is warriors don't ask for permission. We don't sit on the sidelines and oh, I guess I'm not in the battle anymore. I guess there's nothing for me to do. Like, wouldn't we find something to do? I feel like I've done that. I feel like millions of men who I interact with throughout the past 6 years would say, yeah, I just went out there and asserted myself. But I've seen a lot of guys retreat voluntarily, or they're told, you can do this, you can't do this, you got to behave this way, you got to behave that way, and then actually acquiesce to that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, right. So now we're talking about different profiles of guys and also different situations. I mean, when you literally lost your job, you couldn't go out and look for work, and you're sitting at home in your kitchen on your laptop trying to get something done, that is really crushing.
Sure.
That's brutal. And then you got guys like you who are like, I don't care what the world says, I'm going to go make a difference somehow. I'm going to go engage something. Those guys are doing pretty well. And those are the guys that went out and ran every day, or got in the woods. Those are the guys that kept a healthy rhythm to their life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's a spectrum of guys, who were able to or not able to, and who it worked great for the first 6 months, but it's not going so good now. Yeah, it's just hard to maintain that, right?
It is if you don't have a support unit. And I know you're huge on this, is making sure that you have other guys in your corner. And I'll give you an anecdote from my own personal life. I go to jujitsu just about every day. I go 5 days a week. That's a support structure that has accountability built into it. Like
Yeah, it's
yes,
phenomenal.
I get to decide, sure, but not really, because if I don't go, somebody's going to message me and say, hey, where were you tonight?
Yeah.
And so I go, and that's a
Yeah.
minor accountability structure built into it that allows me to continue the repetition that I've been
Yep.
on.
Yep. Yep. I think that's huge. Okay. So now we're back to, why was it rougher on men than on women? I think it has been. And it's because the natural places, most of the gyms closed,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Most of the bars closed. And guys didn't, weren't able to connect with their pals. Their travel was cut off. Some of my best friends are literally out of the country, and we weren't able to get together this year and go fishing or hunting, or the kind of the things that we do. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that, whereas women, when their relational networks got messed up, they just got online. They got on Zoom groups, and they got on FaceTime, and right, and WhatsApp, and they kind of kept it going. But guys, I think, really did get isolated because, they normally hung out at the gym, or maybe it was backyard barbecues on the game on Sunday. Well, the games were all canceled.
Right.
Right? Leagues shut down, right?
Right.
Yeah. And that's
You know
ramping
what's
back up, and things are healing on that. But guys do need to get out of the isolation now.
Yeah, I agree. And you talk about women getting on Zoom and connecting that way. And I think I'm speaking in generalities here, but I think women are better at not necessarily needing direction to converse. It's circular, it's back and
Yeah.
forth. And I think men are more directional. So take jujitsu, for example. Well, we're fighting each other. There's an objective, right? Or you
Yes.
take hunting. I think I see some elk sheds up there over your right shoulder, maybe.
Elk
There's
and caribou.
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. There's a
Yeah.
purpose. You go with your buddies, and you're not just talking. Like,
Yep.
that sounds weird to me, actually. I don't want to sit and talk. I want to go figure out how we can communicate to go kill that caribou or that elk. And it's very
Yeah.
directional as opposed to circular,
Yep.
congregational. I don't know the right term to use.
Yeah. Well, you've just tapped on why the church has not seen a large number of men increase in their congregations. Men are dropping off, in large numbers, because
Mm-hmm.
guys don't want to just sit around in a circle and talk. They want to go do something together, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's go fix cars. Let's go ride mountain bikes. Let's go on an epic trip. And if you'll do that, guys will talk, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, you get killer conversations on a road trip.
So, how do you suggest that a man who feels isolated, who feels remote, begin to work this in the wake of still some lockdowns and some restrictions? Again, I'm of the mindset, you know what, just go do it. If you want to go to jujitsu, I guarantee there's an underground jujitsu somewhere,
Yeah.
despite the lockdowns. And I guarantee there is.
Yeah.
But what does the guy who feels isolated do for himself?
Yeah, you don't need a gang. Right now, you need one dude. Find
Hmm.
one dude who's willing to go do something, right? Go bike every week, right? I mean, the gyms are opening back up, things like that. Go to the batting cages, just something, right? One guy is all you need right now to break the isolation.
Have you found that men, I agree with that. Have you found that men struggle because, well, let me give you an example. Let's say that John, you and I were in the same area, and I thought, I'd really like to connect with John. But I think a lot of men have a little bit of awkwardness. Like I call you up, I'm like, hey, let's go to the driving range and let's go hit some balls. And like I'm asking you on a date almost.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
guys have some struggle with that. Have you found that to be
Yeah.
true?
Oh, totally, man. Totally. Yeah. This is why I think one of the most helpful categories for men is the category of courage. Like, because while at heart and the whole movement around that, guys, we get a lot of feedback from guys and guys who come to our events and go, oh, I actually connect with this. I thought you had to be a lumberjack to dig this stuff, And
Right,
I'm
right.
like, no, 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 no. The core issues are issues of courage and strength and intentionality. It takes a lot of courage to have a child. Like you want to jump off the deep end in your life, like you choose to have a child, like that is,
Yeah,
it takes a
sure.
lot of courage to change jobs, change careers. It takes a lot of courage to do what you did, which is, hey, I'm just going to go chase this dream. I want to do this. I'm going to make it happen. Like that takes courage. So it takes courage to reach out to another guy and say, hey man, you want to do something? You want to hang out? You want to just come to my back deck and we'll just have beers. Like it doesn't need to be big, right?
Right.
Some of the adventures are not going to open up for us yet, right? But some of the smaller stuff can.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think we make it grander than it needs to be, and we place too much emphasis. I had a friend of mine who I train with, jujitsu with, and he called me up. This was about a month ago, maybe a little longer, and he said, "Hey, man, I just got a new bow, and I know you have some targets at your house. Do you mind if I come over this weekend and shoot?" Yeah, absolutely. Come shoot. And in the meantime, we developed and we nurtured and fostered our relationship by having conversations in between shots. But
Boom.
it wasn't this big, imposing, awkward, intimidating thing. It was like, let's just shoot some bows and arrows. And that's all it was. And it was a great
Yeah.
opportunity for us to connect at a deeper level.
Yeah, that's really good. And notice the difference. He didn't say, hey, can I come over and talk?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right? Yeah, it's do something. It helps to suggest, let's go do something. Let's go ride. Let's go try these new mountain e-bikes. I want to try one of those. Let's go do something together. Right.
You,
And if you
you
like the guys listening to you, if you want a killer mission, start something for dudes right now.
right.
Start a regular Saturday afternoon. Hey, we're shooting bows at my house. And even if you've never shot, come on over and we'll teach you how to shoot a bow. Like seriously, you will be throwing a lifeline to guys if you start something like that.
Well, and not only throwing a lifeline to other men, which is valuable, but a lifeline to yourself. Like start fixing yourself. You want to fix, like you talked about earlier, get yourself in the
Yeah.
position where you can be around other guys so you can fix your own life. Because these guys are
Yeah.
going to share things with you that you would not have learned otherwise.
Yeah. Big time.
One of the things that you also talk about is the uniqueness of the masculine soul
Yeah.
and how this you use the term pandemic, which if I understand you correctly, is all encompassing between the
Yeah.
politics and the virus
The
and
glo- the
the
global jack up. Yeah.
right, right. So, what is it about the uniqueness of our soul that makes this challenging for us?
um, okay, a couple things. One, the warrior within. Men know there's some kind of battle going on. We're just not quite sure which battle it is and how
Mm,
to fight it. So you saw all the anger in American politics, in the fall, right? I mean, I think it was the most angry presidential race I've ever seen.
I agree. Sure.
Yeah, people on both sides were just pissed off. I think that's a symptom of I'm a warrior. I'm made to fight something. I just don't know what it is.
Mm,
So that's really hard on a guy when his mission isn't clear. His battle isn't clear. But the other thing is we've been talking about adventure. Adventure is not just having fun. Adventure is literally food for the masculine soul. and,
mm,
and adventure's got a lot of different scales to it. You talked about going down to the driving range, that you've got that daily, weekly stuff that just nourishes you, right? But there are higher levels of adventure. It's the changing the career. It's the, moving towns, that kind of thing, chasing a dream, right? there are higher levels of adventure for your life. So much of that got shut down as well. So he didn't know what battle to fight. Most of his adventure got taken away. It's like a famine for the masculine soul, right? And then the third core desire is the beauty, the woman, the beauty, love, romance, intimacy, and marriages that were actually fairly okay while both of them were not with each other all day.
Yeah, absence makes the heart grow fonder, right?
Oh man, you got tossed into the same apartment for
Yeah.
all those months. Like that was rough. That was rough. And if you made it through it, like kudos, guys, way to go. Because we're not designed for that. We're actually not designed to live in a single apartment with a woman for 24/7. That's just guys meant to get out. They're meant to do stuff. They're meant to be with other guys. So those
Isn't
three
that funny?
things.
One of the things I think about is you're talking about living with women. One of the first things to go when a man gets into a deeply committed relationship is his friendships. He turns all of his heart and attention towards his wife, which is actually, and I know you're a Christian, is actually a biblical principle, right? You cling to her and no other. But then we let our friendships and our hobbies go. Those are the first things to go. And we think, well, this is right. This is what we should be doing. And it actually isn't. It's detrimental to the relationship. It's kind of ironic, but it is detrimental to the relationship. That's actually where I got into a lot of trouble early on in my relationship is I ditched my friends. I ditched my hobbies. I gave it all to her. I burned out. I burned her out. And then we went through a separation and near divorce. Fortunately, we reconciled and fixed things, but it was a recipe for disaster for us.
Yeah, exactly. You can't be her everything, and she can't be your everything. And let me tell you, guys, you do not want to be her best friend. She needs a best friend. You need to be her man. You need to be
Yes.
her husband. You need to be her lover, but you don't want to be her best friend. You don't want to be her counselor. Okay. Like she's got to have other relational supports in her life, and so do you. And yeah, that's huge. A lot of guys make that mistake, or they make the mistake that I'm gonna veer off and pick up a whole bunch of our conversation right now in one like net. So a man's search for validation is probably the fundamental search of his life. Every single day, we're looking for an answer to the question, do I have what it takes? And in our work, in our hobbies, in our finances, in our health, in our body, right? We're constantly looking for that sense of, I'm killing it. I'm the man. I have what it takes, right? And so when you take away validation from a man in a lot of areas of his life, he's not going to thrive, right? So he loses his job, or it gets weird and he's on Zoom meetings. My poor pals. I got pals who are working 8 hours a day online.
Oh yeah, I cannot imagine what that would be like. Miserable.
Oh, it's gonna mess you up. Like the human brain can't take that. And we, go off on that rabbit trail, but that's just really harmful. Okay. So you take away all that validation, and then he turns to his wife and he's looking for her to validate him. That is not going to go well, right? You do not look to the woman for your validation. Okay. You bring to her strength. You don't try and get your strength from her. Does that make sense?
Yes. Where does your strength derive from? When I hear validation, I think what I would immediately jump towards is external validation, not necessarily internal. So can you walk me through where that validation ought to be coming from if it isn't coming from your woman?
Yeah, it's both. It is both. Of course, it comes externally. Of course, it does. We're not entirely like spiritual creatures, but there is an internal world that every man has as well. And the internal world is always the deepest action, right? So let's look at boys for a moment. So the journey from boy to man is a journey that was meant to be a journey of initiation. How did you get into jujitsu?
I had a friend reach out to me. In fact, he was a business partner. We've done a lot of events and things like that together, and I've been interested in it. He said, "Why don't you come?" And we went, and I went to my first class and second class, and here I am 3 years deep into this thing.
Yeah. And what would you say it's done for you?
Well, it's making me more capable. I think that's the lowest hanging fruit. But also, if I were to think about it deeper, it's definitely given me a level of confidence. It's established a brotherhood that I don't think I would have had any other way. It's given me discipline, accountability. These are some of the things besides the
Yeah.
fighting capabilities of it.
Oh yeah, right, right. It's
Sure.
just fun, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
oh yeah. Okay. So that experience that you just described, physical engagement that was building confidence, that was building a deeper sense of self, that was building a sense of connection with other men, right? You didn't talk about doing it with other women. This isn't a
Mm,
ladies group, right?
right.
It's a,
Right.
okay. All right. So from boyhood to man, the boy is meant to be initiated like that through a
Mm,
series of experiences in the masculine community. Okay. Definitely dad, but not just dad, because dad can't handle all that. It's his baseball coach, it's his math teacher, right? It's his uncle that takes him snowboarding. It's the masculine community. The boy learns over time that he has what it takes. He has a series of experiences and affirmations, setbacks, failures, you bet.
hmm
But if someone's there to help him interpret those failures, he gets back up, he tries again, he recalibrates, right? And he develops a kind of internal settledness. I know who I am.
mm,
I know who I am, and I know that I can handle what life throws at me. Okay. Most men do not get that.
right.
Most boys did not have that growing up. And so they are still searching for that. And so if they're killing it at work, they become the workaholic because that's the one place that that sense of I know who I am is coming, right?
hmm
Yeah, yeah. So this is the journey for every guy. If he's good at sports, he gravitates towards sports. If he's a long distance runner, he's looking for that deep sense of he's solid inside, right? He's good, and he doesn't need the woman to affirm him as a man.
Hmm.
And this is the fascinating key to pornography. Pornography is not primarily about sex. It isn't. That beauty, when she is, quote, offering herself to you, although it's kind of bizarre because she's offering herself to a million other men,
Not
but
yeah,
like
not
it,
to you, right? Sure, to
yeah, yeah,
somebody
yeah, yeah, yeah.
else.
But your brain doesn't get that. Like in that moment, you feel like I'm the man because you feel alive as a man, right?
Hmm.
There's so many deep issues of validation in it. But when you know who you are as a man, you look at that stuff and you just go, man, that's artificial. It's not even real. Like, give me a real woman, for heaven's sakes, and a real woman that I'm in relationship with, not just, you see how that goes? The less validated you are, the more taken out you are by the substitutes.
And I also think it's very easy. I talk about pornography, for example. It's easier to turn on your computer than it is to woo a woman. Yeah, no, like so sometimes we're always going to take those paths of least resistance.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, exactly.
So how does a man who's, let's say, 40 years old, and these are the types of messages I get, I'm sure you get these messages as well. I didn't have a dad growing up. I never learned these things. I'm trying to figure this out now. And he's 4 decades into this thing we call life, and he's never had this quote unquote initiation. Is this something that he has to create for himself? That he has to, I don't want to say manufacture, but I think you understand the point that he has to build up himself.
No, he does need to engage. Men and passivity never go together.
Hmm.
Right? The take no action never works with a guy. You do have to engage. Like your friend said, can I come shoot bows? Yes, you can. And then something cool happened. He took a step. He
Mm-hmm.
engaged, right?
Sure. Right. Right.
You got the invitation to go to jujitsu that first time, but you had to engage.
But I
You
had
had
to
to
go.
choose. I'm going. Okay. So you do need to engage, but we got to put this in a context for a minute. Um, because I am a Christian, I believe that you have a father, that there is a father who loves you deeply and was actually always meant to be your father.
Hmm.
Some of us got good dads, some of us got bad dads, some of us got just okay dads. My dad was an alcoholic. He totally blew the family up. And I was not that initiated young man. I began with a process of initiation, but then it got totally stolen from me when my dad blew up the family. So
The process of initiation was some
yeah,
element of
from boy
relationship
to
with
man.
him. Got it.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, because it starts with the dad. The
Right.
boy looks to his father for two things: love and validation. Do you love me, dad? And do I have what it takes? And depending on how that got answered in your life, has really shaped you into who you are today. Okay.
Can I
So
interrupt right here real quick?
yeah,
Because I've got my own children. We could talk. I could go on so many different tangents. I've got my own children. I've got 3 boys and a little girl. Is it appropriate if the boy, I've got a son, he's turning 13 tomorrow. Is it appropriate if the boy is trying to answer the question, do I have what it takes, for the father to either verbally or non-verbally communicate, no, you don't, but you can? You see what I'm saying? Like, does that crush a boy's spirit to say, no, you actually don't have what it takes, but let me show you how?
well, I would say only in the context of love.
Mm,
Because discipline and correction that takes place in the context of love strengthens and guides a boy. Discipline and correction that takes place without love, like just in the context of anger or irritation, or, hey, come on, man, get your act together.
mm,
You're effing it up, dude. What are you doing? That kind of
right.
thing, right? No, that does not help, man. That stuff
Mm.
is that's crushing stuff.
Filtered through
Um,
the context of love, that I'm here to serve
yeah,
you, I care about you.
yeah. So you got the young guy wants to do flips on the trampoline, right? And you're like, whoa, time out, pal. Like, we're not jumping off the balcony yet, right? We're gonna start with flips that I help you with, right? And then you'll do flips on your own, and then you can jump off the balcony, right? But
Got it.
yeah, but the little guy's a wild guy, and if he's an adolescent, he's a really wild guy, and so yeah, of course that needs to be shaped, guided, directed, but it's in the context of I am here for you,
Mm,
right? So you ask me, guy 40 years old, writes into you, calls in, says, hey, I'm sideways. I didn't get any of this stuff. What do I do? I would say there's two things that you have to deal with. You have to deal with your relationship with your father. You have to. What was that like? And what was his message to you growing up? You have to deal with that stuff. You can't just ignore that. That'll haunt you the rest of your life. And you need to pick up the journey. And now we're back to the engagement piece about, okay,
hmm
not with everything, not all at once, one thing. Just pick one thing. What's your frontier? Well, I always wanted to be a runner. I'm not a runner. Well, then start there. Okay. There's running clubs in every single town. You can find that, right? Or you're like, gosh, I've always wanted to start my own company. Like, well, look into that. Start chasing that dream. Make a business plan, make a model, talk to some friends, talk to some entrepreneurs. Pick one thing. Don't try
Mm,
and fix your entire life. Okay.
right.
Your initiation journey takes place one step at a time, right? And this, just let me give a shameless shout out. What you should do, you should read Wild at Heart. That's what you should do. It'll change your life, man. It'll provide so much guidance for you.
I will attest to that. And it isn't hyperbole. Yeah, we hear that a lot. Oh, this thing will change your life. I saw an ad on Instagram today. This app will change your life. And my knee jerk reaction is, I mean, really? Like, how much could an app change my life?
Right?
But so we say that, right? And we say it in hyperbole,
Yeah.
and we try to make it bigger than it is. But I remember reading Wild at Heart for the very first time. And one of the most frustrating things, I remember this specifically, I was reading it on an airplane, and I left the dang thing. I got about a third of the way through on the airport, or on the airplane, and I left the dang thing in the seat cushion or the seat pouch or whatever right there. And I walked off, and I was so frustrated because I was really digging the book, and I left it there. So I hope somebody else picked it up and got some value from it. But I had to wait
Right?
for my next copy to come to me. But it quite literally transformed my life. That is not hyperbole.
Yeah. Yeah. And now there's this cool thing I do want to tell guys about it. So last year during the pandemic, we were able to pull off this film series. We made this 6-part film series for guys. It's free. It's online, and it's called the Wild at Heart Experience, and it will walk you through the core categories of validation, initiation, beauty, love, women, all that stuff. It's called the Wild at Heart Experience. It's on our website at wildatheart.org. You can sign up for that. It's free. And these kinds of resources are the sorts of things you should reach out to. Like, don't just try and pull yourself up by your own. That doesn't work, man. Like, find some resources in your life that can give you that internal guidance that you need and can give you a context, like a running club or a jujitsu gym or, a dojo or whatever you need. Like, find a context to live that stuff out.
I think one of the reasons men struggle with this so much is because they interpret reaching out, whether it's one of these organizations or activities, or even some sort of therapy or coaching session or conference or event that they can attend, is that they interpret it as weakness, not as strength. And they want themselves to be strong, of course, to answer the question, do I have what it takes? And if they're thinking they have to go out and reach out to somebody, then the answer is no, I don't have what it takes. I need help.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yes. That's why I raised the issue of courage, because taking choices to engage your healing journey requires enormous courage. And therefore, you are a man. If you make a phone call to see a counselor, holy cow, man, I take my shoes off. That is so freaking courageous. That's amazing. Like, yeah, you're acknowledging a need, but look at the courage that it took to take that step. That's huge. Or go to that conference, read that book, hook up with those guys, and go to the batting cages or whatever. Like, that is courage, guys. That's courage. And the weakness piece. Look, fellas, we just got to all admit right now, we are partial men. We are men on our way. There is a lot of undeveloped man in us. There are a lot of uninitiated places, unhealed places in us. That is true for every single guy on the planet. So you're not alone in that. Every guy is broken. Every guy's got a journey to take. And the guy who won't admit that is the guy that his life is not going to go well.
Yeah, I used to believe, especially one of the darkest times of my life is when, what I alluded to earlier, my wife and I went through a separation. And I used to believe, to a degree in my own mind, I had made this thing up, that I was, the only person that had ever experienced this, that my situation was unique and nobody else understood what I was going through. And I think part of the reason that you've had so much success and we've had a relative amount of success as well is because we're drawing light to the fact that no man is an island, that whatever you've experienced, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, separation with your wife, addiction, bankruptcies, medical conditions, whatever it could be, there are millions and millions of other men who have experienced what you're experiencing and are either on the same part of the path or maybe further down the path, but we don't have to be an island. We can do it together. And I think that's why we're seeing so much success with what we're doing.
Yeah, right on. That's so good. I love that.
So one of my favorite quotes that you've ever said, and I say this all the time, the guys hear me say it and they're probably rolling their eyes because they're like, okay, he's going to say this again. Here it is. Deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. You talked about that a second ago. So the battle component, I've come to the realization that people aren't selecting the right battles. And so we're making up dumb things, trivial things to worry about. We're arguing about non-issues because we don't actually have a meaningful battle. I felt that way until I started doing this work. And I feel like I've found my battle in the hill that I'm willing to die on. I've planted my flag. But how does a man begin to explore and identify what his particular battle is?
Well, some of that stuff's already coming at you guys. Like, some of those battles you don't get to pick. The wife just said she's done with you, or your 16-year-old daughter's dating an idiot, or
They're all
some
idiots,
of those,
right? I mean, that's got to be the
well,
case.
yeah, right. So, guys, some of the battles are just coming at you, and those require humility, courage, cunning, and somebody to help you process it. Right? You're sideways with your 16-year-old daughter. Go talk to another dude who's got a daughter.
Mm,
Go, how'd you do it, man? Well, this is what I'm facing. Shouldn't even want to talk to me. How'd you do it? Right? Okay, so you got battles who are just coming at you.
sure.
But
Right.
let's talk about the higher thing. Okay. You also need some sort of purpose to your life, which is what you were talking about with the show here and what you guys are doing. Here's a helpful category. Is it a big story or a small story? I use that a lot when I'm looking at people's lives and the things that just get people so wound up. I'm like, man, that is a really small story. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, right? You're like,
I
get
had
the
a
bigger
friend that used to
story.
say to me, "Is this going to matter in the next, 2 hours?" And 99% of the time, the answer was no. Then
Yeah,
and
let
she would
alone the
always say,
next
"Then
10 years,
yeah."
right?
And then she said, "Then don't worry about it. Just drop
Yeah,
it, move on, drive
yeah,
on. It's
yeah,
okay."
exactly. Get in a bigger story, guys. Get in a bigger story. You are a warrior for a reason, and the reason is on behalf of others. Again, this is one of the core lessons of the masculine journey. You have a strength, but your strength is not for your happy little life. It's not so you can get a bigger hot tub. Okay? Your strength, your masculinity, your soul, everything that makes you you, your passions, dreams, your ingenuity, who you are, is on behalf of other people. So
Mm.
who are you helping? Who are you fighting for? What? Get in a bigger story.
What is so when you talk about this warrior and finding this bigger story, I think warrior is an interesting term because it's so often used and misconstrued and 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 manipulated, massaged, and marketed. So everybody says you're a warrior. It's like, well, is every man a warrior? Is that an archetype? Is that just an overused word? Help me understand that this warrior spirit or archetype or element of masculinity that you're talking about here. Because not
Yes.
everybody feels like a warrior.
I know
I've
that.
talked with plenty of men who would consider themselves maybe more artistic, for example. And I'm like, I'm not a warrior. I'm an artist. And I think that's
Yeah.
great. So
Yes,
help me understand
totally.
that.
My son is finishing his MFA in poetry. Okay.
Right,
He's a,
right.
he also has his black belt, but he's a really, really sensitive kid. And he's a poet. And that's what he wants to do and be and teach and bring to the world. I'm telling you, finishing grad school is going to take every bit of warrior in him, right? Finish a book. That's going to take a warrior, right? Stand up to your boss about some moral things going on in your company. That's going to take the
Mm,
warrior. Like, and let me get this really practical. Every day you face a battle of the thoughts going through your head.
mm-hmm.
Every day, every guy, right? And some guys it's fear and anxiety. Other guys it's depression and discouragement. You suck at this. You suck at life, right? Nobody wants what you got to offer. All that stuff, right?
Right.
That's your first battle. That is your first battle. And you are a warrior because you are going to have to fight that stuff. You are going to have to fight it off. So, our first battle every day is, what are you believing? What are you believing about yourself? What are you believing about God and his love and care for you? What are you believing about the world? Like, guys, you were born into a world at war. Nobody gets out of this. Nobody gets to
Mm-hmm.
escape it. There is no Switzerland in this world. There's no neutral ground. You were in a full on war. You got born into it. It's been going on for millennia. What you have is your first daily fight is for your own heart.
I like this. It's interesting. A lot of people, not a lot. I used to get this when I started more than I do now, but people would say, you're using these terms warrior and battle, and you're just trying to make it seem larger than it is, or fear mongering. That's when I get occasionally. You're fear mongering. I don't care what you interpret that to be. I like the term battle because it for whatever reason, it helps me realize the ramifications of the choices that I'm making. It helps me come to the realization that I need to put on armor and that I need to make myself capable. There's a battle with the alarm clock. There's a battle with, before I get on a conversation with you, do I spend some time and actually get prepared, or do I just wing it? Everything is a battle. And if I look at it and frame it in that context, it better equips me to do the things that I know I ought to be doing. And frankly, the things I want to be doing. I want to be prepared. I don't want to hit the snooze. I want to go into the gym. Those are the things I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, right on, Ryan. That's good stuff. And let me tell you how the battle really helps. When you realize that you are in a world at war, and that the ancient fight of good and evil is very, very real and is taking place against your head and your heart every day, it helps you realize this isn't just you guys. You're not just a screw up. The guy gets a dream. He's like, man, I'm gonna open a running store. I love running. I want to help other people run. I'm gonna open a running, shoe store and running shop kind of thing. And it doesn't go well. And he's like, well, I guess I just suck at life. You go, no, 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 man. It was opposed. Your dreams are opposed. Your friendships are opposed. Your marriage is opposed. Guys, the good news about this is it's not just you. Your setbacks, your struggles, your addictions. It's not just you. You're in a war. It really helps take some of the shame off of it when you begin to realize, whoa, hang on a second, man. Like, this isn't just me not being able to get up and exercise today. Like, there are forces set against my life. And that calls a man out. It calls him up. It really does.
Well, and I think it also equips them with a realistic picture that it isn't going to go easy. One of the things that's such a pet peeve of mine as a Christian myself, when I hear people say, well, it'll work if it's God's will. I'm like, no. God wants you to be happy. He wants you to be successful. He wants you to thrive. Yes, of course. I'm not doubting that. It isn't entirely up to him. Just like me as a father who wants my children to succeed, it doesn't mean that they're going to succeed because it's my will that they do. They have a part to play in this thing. And yes, maybe it's God's will to see you thrive, but that doesn't guarantee success. You are an actor in this thing. You are a player. So act like it.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Let's shift topics here a little bit and talk about boys, because you've mentioned the boy crisis, and I've had Dr. Leonard Sachs, who I'm sure you're familiar with his work, and Dr. Warren Farrell talk about these concepts of how difficult I actually think it's going to be for our children. I'm almost 40 years old. I've been a father for nearly 13 years now, and I think over the last 12 to 18 months is the first time that I've really feared for my children and their ability to thrive in their own lives the way that my wife and I have been able to in ours.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough times. The boy crisis, so to speak, is largely centered around a couple things. It's the fatherlessness, boys who don't have fathers, or boys who have fathers who are checked out, which is why the greatest gift that you give to the world. Carl Jung had a fascinating line. He said, the greatest psychological impact of a parent on a child is the unlived life of the parent. You're checked out, you're shut down, you're not alive, you're not caring for your own heart, you are not living intentionally, joyfully, purposefully. That's going to have a huge impact on your kids. So
that's a challenge, because I think what a lot of guys lead themselves to believe, and I call these noble obstacles, which isn't my term, I've heard that somewhere, that they'll excuse taking care of themselves because they love their kids and they want to be with their kids, or they want to serve their families. And so, I can't go. I've heard people say this verbatim. Well, I would really like to go to the gym, but I'm just too busy with my kids. And so they come first. as if it's some sort of dichotomy you have to choose between your kids or yourself.
Yeah. And life is crazy busy. So I get it.
No
And
doubt.
it's crazy busy. But you just got to consider that they are watching you and they are learning what it means to be a mature human being. And mature human beings do not neglect their well-being. Right. So what are you modeling to your kids? I told a gal the other day, I said, the greatest gift you can give to your daughter right now who's really struggling, I said, is that you go to counseling as her mom, not with her, you go,
Mm,
because she needs to see you set an example that caring for your inner life is a really high priority for human beings, right? Show her the
right.
way, show her the way. And yeah, the other thing that's going on though is technology, is the amount of screen time, all of that. You've had guests on your show talking about that.
Of course.
In terms of parenting healthy kids going forward, if I could give a couple of things, it is give them a love for real things,
Mm,
so that water balloon fights are much more fun than their apps, so that the family ski trip is way more fun than their shows, right? So that blowing stuff up in the backyard as boys is way more fun than watching stuff blowing up on YouTube. Like
right.
at this point, the fight is the real versus the artificial. That's the fight. Because they are being sucked into an artificial world that's pretty intoxicating, right? It's really cool, man. They got all
Well, it comes
kinds of
back to
stuff.
that ease, right? Is I can just, punch in whatever search term I want on YouTube and I can find it right there. But actually blowing something up in the backyard in a relatively safely manner takes a little bit more effort,
Yeah, yeah, right. But give them a love for it. Give them a love for the thing is, it's a much bigger gas. I would much rather go fishing than watch people fish on
Of
YouTube.
course, 100%.
Right? Yes, it's a no-brainer. But show your kids that. Like, take them into the real world. Give them fun stuff to do. Make the real more interesting than the artificial or the digital or the technology. That is the big fight ahead of us as parents.
I think sometimes we don't do that out of selfishness, right? Because it is, I talk about it being harder for the kids, but it's also harder for you. It means that you'll need to invest and you'll need to turn off your phone and you will need to do some planning and you will need to get out of the digital world yourself. A lot of the times we, we say things for our kid. We're doing the best by our children. And in all reality, you're really trying to do the best by you, but you're saying it's for your kids.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you know what, guys? Here's the deal. You love to play.
Yes.
Every guy loves to play. It's wired in us, right? So go play and bring your kids into it. Go play with the things they want to do. Like, just go do fun stuff together. Your
The other,
house should be a very playful place, by the way. Like spontaneous Nerf gun wars, spontaneous, jumping off the roof onto the trampoline, just crazy stuff. Like, your house, gang, should be a playful place that the kids go, wow, like there's life here.
right. I think the other thing that we like to do is compete. And it's funny because we'll find anything to compete over. We'll go outside and the kids will be on their bike. And I'm like, well, let's see who can do it the fastest, who can get from one end of
Yep.
the driveway or the next, the fastest. Or,
Yep.
or we go down the sledding hill and, who can stand on their sled instead of sit on it, who can stand on it and make it the furthest down the hill.
Yep.
These are the kind of things that are just so fun to do with your kids.
Yeah. And that's the warrior, by the way. That competitive view that
Mm.
turns everything into competition. That's the warrior. There he
It's
is. He's
interesting though,
coming out.
because society has painted it as so negative, right? I'm sure you're familiar with this American Psychological Association study they did several years ago about how the characteristics, and I'm paraphrasing here, the characteristics that we would traditionally assign to masculinity in men, stoicism, aggression, dominance, and competitiveness, are somehow inherently dangerous or destructive to our young men, which is the furthest thing from the truth. It's got to be harnessed. It's got to be utilized for productive outcomes for them and other people.
Right. It all depends on what is it in the service of.
Mm,
Because the other thing that study, there were actually some things that were totally right about that. Because what they were saying is men neglect their emotional life to their harm. And I would
mm.
say, yep, they sure do.
So what's your
You
take then
are,
on toxic masculinity?
well, some masculinity is toxic, right? The hard ass dude who's always rough on his kids, who disciplines not out of love, but out of anger and frustration, that's full on toxic. Yes, man, he's doing damage, right? Yeah. Like, there is it in the context of love? What is it in the service of? Is it in the service of your ego, the service of your own agenda? Like, that's jacked, guys. Like, strength, warrior, intentionality, courage, combat, absolutely in the service of what?
Mm. I also like that you're using the word love, but it's an interesting word because it's very uncomfortable for men because I think primarily, I don't know if it's primarily, but definitely in the English language, when we think of love, we think of romance, romantic interest. And there's so many different types of love. Obviously, I don't think of love in the context of loving my children as romantic. Obviously, I don't think of the love that I have for my friends and my brothers and my training partners as romantic. I just wish we could, in a way, expand that word out to mean something more than just
Yeah.
intimacy and romance.
Yeah, we really do. We need to take that word back. But bottom line, guys, this is for your good. Just think of it that way. This is on your behalf. That's love.
John, I know that you've got obviously Wild at Heart, which is a book that every time I talk about a book a man should read, it's that is always on the list. You've got this new expanded edition. Can you tell me a little bit about what's included in the expanded edition?
Yeah. We went back just to make sure that it was speaking to the times. It's 20 years old, but it's still it's still one of the leading books out there on the list. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason why is because it works. It works. It heals. It heals the masculine soul. Went back through, updated stories, analogies, language to make sure it could speak. If a 20-year-old guy picked it up, would it still speak?
Mm.
Right? Because I wrote it, when before he was even born, if he's 20. And then we added some sections in there to just kind of make it a little more relevant to the current, like the technology issue for boys in the masculine journey, some of the gender questions woven in there. I think with some grace. We're not trying to pick a fight. We're trying to help people towards wholeheartedness. That's what we're after. And then with that, we launched the Wild at Heart Experience, which is this 6-week program that's available for free. That
Right.
you can walk through these film series and some of the readings from the book, some questions for reflection at wildatheart.org.
I'm glad that you talked about with some level of humility and grace in the way you're explaining these concepts is not to pick fights or pick on anybody. I think it's so prevalent to be contentious because I mean, let's be honest, on social media, contention is what scores the social media clout. We got to be really honest about that. That's what
Oh
gets
yeah.
eyeballs. And so
Yeah.
one of the things that I really appreciate among others that you do is it's not this contentious spirit. It's not poking. It's not trying to make other people feel wrong or bad. It's just illustrating and highlighting a path that I would attest serves people more effectively. But as you've said, and I think this is the theme that's run through this conversation, it comes from a place of love and care, not spite and contention and animosity.
Yeah. I used to be that guy.
Well, that's an
He didn't
immaturity, right?
he didn't win a lot of friends.
Definitely, definitely.
That wasn't good on my marriage. That wasn't good for my sons. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Isn't
part of
it?
our transformation.
It is, and isn't it a great place to be? It feels good because I used to be that guy too, and I am still that guy in a lot of ways. Like, let's be truthful about that. There's
Sure.
days where I want to get
Sure.
somebody back and say the thing, and I'm
Oh
good
yeah.
at stinging people in the right place if I need to with
Yep.
my words and my actions. But isn't it nice to know that we can elevate ourselves and step into this mature masculinity, which serves ourselves and everybody else better?
Yeah, totally. You're going to love your life more. Is the bottom line. You really
Yeah,
are.
yeah. Well, John, I appreciate you. Your work has quite literally transformed my life from the day that I
Mm.
started reading that book on that airplane and left that dang book in that seat pocket. to now and being able to have a couple of conversations with you. Where would you direct the guys if they want to learn more about what you're doing and what you're up to? Where would you direct and send them?
Yeah, thanks. That's generous. Wildatheart.org is our website. You can find some really cool stuff there, film series, podcasts, groups for guys. You can connect with other guys. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll sync it all up so the guys know where to go. Again, I appreciate you. I'm so honored to be able to have these types of conversations with you. And I thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, cheering you on, Ryan. Way to go. You've made a series of really good choices, and I am super proud of you. Well done.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that.
Yeah.